Hi, I'm Caroline, and I've spent the last week in Utah exploring the national parks of Capitol Reef and Arches, finding secluded gems, ticking off bucket list sites, getting lost in a maze-like hiking trail, and finding an arch that the national park actually lets you walk over. This afternoon, I'll explore Canyonlands Island in the sky, the lazy way, driving from Lookout Point to Lookout Point. Then, the following day, head towards Page in Arizona, stopping off at some pretty cool places along the way.
Arrived in Canyonlands National Park, and we're actually feeling really quite blessed because the sky has clouded over, and actually if anything that's giving us quite a bit of respite here in the desert heat. So we're off to go and explore and see what this national park has got to offer. To the Schaefer Canyon Overlook here at Canyonlands National Park, and we've just been reading up on this area here, and it's quite interesting because in the early 1900s the road that you can see behind me was actually here, but not in the form at which you can see it today. Lots of the farmers were using it to bring cattle down into the canyon, either for shelter or to be able to get water from the Colorado River. But of course, in order for the animals to graze, they were having to bring all of their animals back up to the top of the canyon, and it was absolutely perilous, and quite often many of the animals would end up falling to their deaths. In the 1950s, however, there was a bit of a uranium boom, and companies came in and they ended up building a much better road, which is kind of like the road that you can see today, certainly much wider. However, unfortunately, you can only go down on this if you've got something like a 4x4 vehicle, which we do not have. However, it's a stunning viewpoint all the same. Okay, I think you might need to forget what I just said back at the last viewpoint, because we have someone doing this Shafer Trail in a regular car. I'm sincerely hoping that it's not a rental car, because that would have just voided any kind of insurance that they may have had. Let's hope they don't break down. We've come here to Mesa Arch, which is a really short stroll away from the parking lot. It is the place that a lot of people choose to come for sunrise. However, whilst we've done a lot of sunrises, and we're doing a lot of sunrises here in the desert as well, we just don't feel like we're going to get enough bang for our buck. We really love to hike, and there is a hiking trail that we really want to do over in Arches National Park, and the trailhead, there's signs up saying best time to do it is first thing in the morning. One, because you'll beat the heat, but two, also the colours from the sunlight are the best first thing in the morning, and that is over in the other national park. And if we were to come here for sunrise, yes, we'd be able to get an amazing shot, but then we'd be sacrificing the hiking, which is one of the main reasons as to why we've come away to these national parks, because of all of the hiking. So we've just decided, you know what, come in the afternoon, it's still absolutely beautiful even though the sun isn't rising through the arch, and it's definitely worth it because it's so close to the parking lot. Come to Grand Viewpoint, which is at the very end of the accessible tarmac road here in Canyonlands National Park. And we went along to the viewpoint part of it, which is all fenced off, and it was really crowded with loads and loads of people. And then we just took a look to our right, and we could see that there's actually a 1-mile trail that goes along the canyon rim, which we've just come literally onto, and it's much nicer down here, far less people, and it's also not cordoned off as well. So I think like the views are a lot better if you come along to this part of it. And I think that this overlook here of Green River is going to conclude exploration of this part of Canyonlands National Park. We've only really had a look around Island in the Sky because it is one of the most accessible parts. There is the Needles to the south, but it's quite a long drive from where we're staying to be able to access it. And then there's also an area called the Maze, but that's like really hardcore people who are into like backcountry camping and hiking for days and days on end, or alternatively who've got 4x4 vehicles, which we just don't have, so there's no real way for us to be able to get into the Maze. But it's an absolutely stunning national park. This name of Island in the Sky is so appropriate. It's just this slither of rock that's just completely uplifted into the sky, and you just feel like it's going to drop off the end of the earth. Obviously the reality is you've got the canyons down to the rivers, you've got the Green River on this side and the Colorado River on the other side, but it's just really, really beautiful national park. We're going to head back now, get some showers, get early to bed so that we can set off tomorrow nice and early for our trails back in Arches National Park. Okay, so it turns out that actually wasn't the end of our time here in Canyonlands. As we've been driving out, we've ended up being greeted with this absolutely beautiful sunset. It's been super cloudy all afternoon into the evening, but I think it's just managed to break through a little bit in the background, and this is just absolutely stunning. So I just wanted to do one last clip before we do eventually head back to the house to get showered and go to bed. Today we are driving between Moab in Utah and Page down across the border in Arizona. Originally our plan was just to drive straight down on, I think it's the 191, its main highway, and just stop off at the Goosenecks point for a nice view with a picnic lunch. However, our amazing Airbnb host, who I feel like I have been absolutely raving about, but rightly so, he has been amazing, he said, don't take that main highway all the way down, turn off, and there's a few places that are really interesting along the way. Unfortunately, one of those places is closed today because it's Sunday, and he was saying that it's like Mormon run. However, what we've done is we've come to Natural Bridges, which is a national monument. It's part of the National Park Service, so we get to come into here using our annual pass, so we haven't had to pay any money to be able to get in, and it's just a cool little stop off point. There are a couple of hikes where we could go down into the canyon, but in all honesty we've been hiking for the last 2 weeks and we are feeling really quite exhausted, so we're just going to have a bit of a chill day, just drive to a few of the lookout points and just check out what this national monument has to offer. Behind me is Sipapu Bridge, and this is one of the largest natural bridges in the entire world, and we've come out to the viewing platform here, and swirling down underneath us are quite a few eagles and I think a few vultures as well, which is quite exciting because so far everywhere we've been, when we've seen a big bird that's been circling around, when we've actually zoomed in on it using our big DSLR camera lenses, every time it's pretty much turned out to be a raven. This is pretty cool, getting to see our first American eagles here in America. In 1883, Prospector Cass Height had a base camp along the Colorado River that wasn't too far from here, and one day he decided to start exploring further up, and it was actually in search of gold, and as it turned out it wasn't gold that he managed to find, and it was in fact the 3 bridges that you can see here today in this national park. Come 1904, the National Geographic magazine had published the 3 bridges, letting the world know about this area. And 4 years later, in 1908, President, or well, wasn't at the time, Theodore Roosevelt, then came, visited it and said, we are going to make this a national monument, and thus starting the first of the sort of national park, national monument areas within the state of Utah. We have come to our third and final bridge, which is the Owachomo Bridge. This one is the oldest one here in the park, and at this point in its lifespan it looks a little bit more like an arch, and this was actually one thing that I was wondering, what's the difference between these that are called bridges and the arches that we've seen in places like Capitol Reef and Arches National Park. And it turns out that in order for something to be classed as a bridge, there needs to be some free-flowing water running underneath it. Now, in its early stages, this bridge was created through the erosion of its rock because of the running river that ran underneath it. However, it's gotten to such a point now in its lifespan whereby that river is no longer eroding away the rock surrounding it, and what's causing it to get thinner is actually things like precipitation, particularly in the winter when it gets really cold. That water that's fallen then freezes. When water freezes, we know that it expands and it's putting pressure onto the rocks, and then of course it's causing that rock to break away. It's definitely towards the end of its lifespan. We're not really too sure how much longer it's going to last. Really similar to some of the ones in Arches National Park. Some of the things that we were learning at the Visitors Information Centre is that whilst we might think that some arches or some bridges are probably going to be the next ones to go, suddenly one that no one expected to collapse in on itself actually collapses in on itself before the ones that people were expecting. So it could be tomorrow, it could be 10 years, it could be 50 years before this one eventually does go. But what we do know is that it's definitely older than the other two that we've seen so far, and yeah, one would assume it's probably going to be the next to go. To continue on to page from the Bridges National Monument, we've taken a little bit of a drive through the desert and down the Moki Dug Way, which is to get us off of the Mesa that you can probably see behind us there. And we've stopped just short of Monument Valley because there is a little state park. I'm going to say little, I really do mean tiny state park, but it's really nicely equipped with picnic benches. We've obviously come here to have our picnic lunch. Unfortunately, it wasn't part of our national park fee pass, so we did have to pay $5 for the car to be able to get in here, but we have been able to have a picnic by an incredible view. And I feel like this, that you can probably now see behind me, is explaining why we decided to pull off the road and why we've decided to pay those extra $5 in order to be able to have a picnic here in an amazing viewpoint. I know that later on we probably are going to be going to Horseshoe Bend, whether that's tomorrow or the day after, we're not too sure, but we have heard that apparently it's really overrun with tourists and super busy, and at the moment there's just a few cars here and a few people, and it is spaced out well enough for it not to feel too overcrowded, so it's really nice, very peaceful. As part of our park entry fee to get into the Gooseneck State Park, we've been given a little bit of literature, and I've just gone really surprised myself. I just assumed that this was the Colorado River, but actually it turns out that it's the San Juan River. This river at around about this point meanders for approximately 6 miles, but it only actually manages to make headway towards Lake Powell by about 1.5 miles. So there's a lot of space wasted in order for the water to be able to get to where it needs to go. Might be wasted space as far as what the river's concerned, it's needing to flow for much longer, but as far as I'm concerned, it makes for a beautiful landscape. So a little bit further along from where the picnic benches all were, we saw that loads and loads of people were coming in, parking up, getting out, taking photographs, and then just leaving again straight away. So we figured, okay, let's just have a wander over to where they've gone. And actually, this is an amazing viewpoint. So I was saying a little bit earlier on about how the river just really meanders, and the fact that it really only manages to make about 1.5 miles progress down the river, even though it meanders for about 6 miles. And at this point, you can really start to see why that's the case. So if I just turn the camera around, that's what we were looking at before, and then if we just keep on looking, so it meanders round to this part, and then it meanders around this part, and then it comes back out towards us at this bit, and then meanders back around over onto that bit there. It just keeps on going. So we are just leaving Gooseneck State Park at the moment, and I have to say $5 for a car can be an absolute bargain if there's 5 of you squished into a vehicle, $1 each. We ended up paying $2.50 each. I think it was alright given that we were there for quite a while. We made use of the facilities that they had there. We had our picnic lunch on the picnic tables. There were quite a few cars that literally came in, drove up to the viewpoint, took a photograph and then left. If we compare it to maybe the cost of some of the other viewpoints that you can have, say in cities, such as going up the Shard in London or the Empire State Building in New York, yes, a bit of a bargain, but I feel like in comparison to our national park pass that gives us access to all of the national parks for the full year at $80, $5 here, it just seems a little bit steep, but viewpoint was amazing. You're not going to get anything else like it anywhere else in the world. So I'd say, yeah, still come, but try and make something out of it, bring some lunch and spend a bit more time there. I spy Monument Valley.
I spy a slow moving scooter.
Yeah, and that. Quick road stop here in Monument Valley just to get a couple of snaps, and we aren't actually stopping off here at Monument Valley to do the whole Monument Valley experience, in part because we've both already been here and we've both already done a lot of the tours. I'm saying we've both been here. I've been here once, Andy's actually been here twice, so we were a bit limited. We could only get, or Andy could only get 3 weeks off from work. We just decided, no, we'd like to go and see some new things and go back to places where we didn't really feel as though we'd done absolutely everything in those destinations that we wanted to do. So it's just a quick photo stop and then we're going to keep on going to Page.
Join me in the next episode as I hike down through a canyon where the reward is a dip in the wonderfully cold Colorado River. I'll spend some time relaxing at the Glen Canyon Recreation Area and find out whether the hype around Horseshoe Bend is actually justified.